So I've just come back from watching Beetlejuice Beetlejuice and I had a lot of fun with this movie. I thought it was quite good, but it weren't without its problems. I had a lot of fun with this movie. I thought it was a return to form for Tim Burton, who obviously was having a lot of fun on this movie. It kind of returned to his roots. I don't know what it is about Tim Burton movies. I either like them or I hate them. His movies always seem to be a little bit hit and miss with me. Like Batman, awesome. Batman Returns, awesome. Edward Scissorhands, awesome. Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. With this movie, I actually find that it feels like a classic Burton film, and I was all for that. And another thing I really enjoyed about this movie was seeing the original cast members return. Of course, not everyone has returned. Some people have died in real life, and there are some people who are now on certain registers who couldn't make it back to this movie. And of course, the characters of Barbara and Adam, played by Alec Baldwin and Gina Davis, did not return because, obviously, I presume, they are now too old in real life to portray the ghosts that they were in the first film, because ghosts don't age. So it was kind of written into the story that they had moved on. They found a loophole somehow and then moved on. A little bit of lazy writing, but it worked, just to get them out of the picture. And we have the return of Winona Ryder, who plays Lydia, who is now in this movie in 2024, presenting a supernatural TV show. And she's kind of not the same character in this movie as she was in the last, and I'll get into that a little bit later. And I really enjoyed the return of Catherine O'Hara as Delia Deetz. And in this movie, her character has actually grown. She was a bit of an antagonist in the last movie, but in this movie, her character's grown, and she's actually the voice of reason in many parts, and she's more likeable of a character. And I thought that was quite interesting, and I was totally on board for that. And then we have Jenny Ortega as Astrid Deetz, who fits in this movie so well, and I would say would probably fit in any Burton movie so well. She seems like she is his kind of actress. Obviously, I think playing the role of Wednesday would have helped her get this role, but she just fits in this world perfectly, and she's perfectly cast. Perfectly. And then, of course, we have the return of Michael Keaton, and man, it was just a pleasure to watch him whenever he was on screen. He did such a good job in this movie, and I was really, really pleased with the performance that he put in. Anything that Michael Keaton is in, I'm pretty much sold on. I love the guy. I think he's great, and obviously he was my favourite Batman. And I just think he's perfect for this role. He's got the timing right, he's got the comedy right, everything about him is perfect for this role. And even 30 years or so after the first movie, he can still hit his mark. He's still good as Beetlejuice. And of course, because of the makeup, you can't really see, well, you can see that he is aged, but you can excuse it because of the makeup. Now, in the original movie, Beetlejuice only has around 17 minutes of screen time. And in the sequel, they've done the same thing. They thought that this was a crucial element. Michael Keaton actually said this was very important to just have him in the same amount of time. And when I was going to the movie to watch it for the first time, I remember thinking, I wish he was in it a little bit more. I really want to see more Keaton in this movie. And I was pleasantly surprised, actually, because it seemed like he was in it a lot longer than 17 minutes. I don't know whether it was because he was putting in such a good performance and you really kind of soaked up every minute you got of him, but it really did feel like he was more central in the story, and that he was in it a lot longer than 17 minutes. And this time round, even though Beetlejuice is still the villain, it feels like he's not entirely the villain. He's kind of an anti-hero character, like he was in the cartoon TV series. So in this movie, expect something a little bit different than what you got in the first movie. Expect to see Beetlejuice teaming up with the main characters to overcome some of the problems that they have, but only in the end to help him with his own problems. But I did feel like they were channeling the animated series just a little bit. Now, as much as I did have a good time with this movie, and I did, there were a few faults with it, I found, and I think there were a few changes that could have been made to make it a better movie. Number one, I think that there was just too many subplots. In fact, I think there were far too many subplots. They could have made this movie a lot more simpler and a lot more enjoyable. But they tended to go for all these different, like I said, subplots for different characters, and it got a little bit heavy in parts and a little bit bloated. Okay, so first we have Lydia, who is now a supernatural TV presenter, and she is most definitely not the same character she was in the first movie. She is more of a broken woman in this, a nervous wreck, and that's probably because of her exploitive boyfriend slash manager who is trying to control her and she's allowing him, and this just didn't feel right for me. I just didn't like this change in the character. I like the change in Catherine O'Hara's character. That was for the better. I really wanted to see the original Lydia. That would have been my first change to this movie. Lydia then receives a phone call off Delia asking her to go and speak with her, and she tells her that her father has died in an aeroplane accident, that he actually survived at first and then he was eaten by a shark. And they do this by incorporating this animated feature, obviously because they can't bring that actor back because of the things he did. They've created this animated feature, and he dies in a horrendous way, and I can't help feeling that they did this on purpose and this was some kind of in joke in the movie. But he dies in a horrendous way, and then the rest of the movie we see him walking around the afterlife. Obviously, like I said, it's not the same actor. They've chosen to kill him in such a way that he doesn't have a head because the shark bit it off. Actually, he doesn't have this top half of his body because the shark has bit it off, and all the way through the movie he's like spurting blood and it's disgusting. He's making squelching noises, and I got it. I got the inside joke. I know what they were doing with this. And the actual wake for Lydia's father's death is held at the original house from the first movie, and this is where we find out that Gina Davis's character and Alec Baldwin's character have actually passed on to the other side through this loophole. Like I said, that's fine. That's a good way to just get them out of the movie. And it's when Lydia returns to the house that Beetlejuice chooses his time to strike to try and come back to the real world. But there's also another subplot going on here where we see a janitor in the underworld cleaning the floors just like we did in the first movie. This janitor is actually played by Danny DeVito, which was awesome to see Danny DeVito back in a Tim Burton film. He may not have been in a Tim Burton film since Batman Returns, so I loved this. I was like fanboying out when I saw this. I thought, oh, this is awesome. And he does actually look quite gross and horrible. Anyway, whilst he's cleaning the storage room, he knocks over these boxes, and in these boxes is like a dismembered woman. And it turns out to be Beetlejuice's wife. And it was Beetlejuice who actually cut her up into pieces before he died, before she poisoned him in life. And we find out that he was like a grave robber in life. I thought this was a really interesting element as well. And then we see this woman staple herself back together, put all her body bits back on, staple herself back together. And this is a trope that Burton loves. He loves to use characters in movies that are women who have been chopped up and who have sewn themselves back together. Catwoman's outfit was kind of stitched here and there. Even though she wasn't stitching her limbs, the outfit was stitched up, and it kind of had the same visual effect. So I don't know what it is, but he seems to like this aspect. Beetlejuice's wife is played by Monica Bellucci. Bellucci. And she is a great actress. I've seen her in many other things. I like seeing her in movies. She's good, and she looks good in this role. She really does, with all the staples across her face and her limbs. She looks good, but unfortunately this character is just totally not needed at all in the movie. She serves no point whatsoever, apart from giving us a backstory to Beetlejuice. This movie could have been so much simpler without this element of the story, because at the end of the movie she doesn't pose any kind of threat. She's after him all the way through the movie, but when it actually comes to it at the end of the movie, she's kind of dealt with very quickly. And then we also have this other subplot where Astrid, played by Jenna Ortega, meets this boy, and they become close together, and then she finds out that he's a ghost, and he wants to become real again. He wants to become alive again. And the only way they can do this is to travel to the underworld together and, I don't know, make some kind of deal or sign some kind of paper. I don't know. I don't really understand how he was going to become real again. But they have to travel to the underworld to do this. And whilst they're gone, Lydia finds out that this boy actually killed his parents in life. And then he fell out of a tree and broke his neck. And he's actually trying to trade in Astrid's life for his own, so he can become alive again and real, and she can stay in the underworld forever. So Lydia has to ask Beetlejuice for help, but of course Beetlejuice says he will help as long as she marries him. So we've got all these different plot points going on at the same time, and I think the biggest plot point that, like I said, isn't needed is the wife element. The wife of Beetlejuice just isn't needed at all, and it serves hardly any purpose apart from giving us a backstory. And I don't even think we need to see a backstory for Beetlejuice. I like the mystery of the character rather than knowing where he came from in detail. He already mentioned in the first movie that he lived through the plague. That was enough for me. But it was kind of cool to see this little backstory, but it was forced in. This wife element was totally forced into the film, or at least it felt that way, and I just don't think it was needed. I think this film would have benefited more if they'd have just gone with the Astrid meets a boy ghost, the boy ghost turns out to be evil, takes her to the underworld to trade her life for his, and that's why Lydia has to go to Beetlejuice for help. And that's your movie. Right there, you could have had Lydia and Beetlejuice running around the underworld, trying to get Astrid back, going on lots of different zany adventures, and that is kind of what we got, but in a more condensed fashion. I think that could have been your movie, full stop, and it would have still been very entertaining and more simplified and easier to follow, and more of a solid movie. But like I said, I didn't have a bad time with this movie. I enjoyed it for what it was, and what I really liked about it is how it felt like a return to the first movie, like in visual effects especially. There wasn't a lot of CGI. There was some, but there wasn't a lot of it. They reverted back to practical effects and stop motion, which was a welcome part of this movie. And especially seeing the sandworms, that was great. And they were stop motion as well, or at least it seemed like they were. And it just fit in with the aesthetics of the first movie, and I was all on board for that kind of stuff. If I can complain a little bit about the look of the movie, and this is just a little bit, it looked a little bit too clean compared to the first movie, and I know that now we're filming on digital now, so it's going to look a little bit different than the first movie. The other movie looked a little bit more dirtier. This one looks very, very clean, and that kind of separates them a little bit, but not too much that it actually matters. But yeah, I had a lot of fun with this movie. I actually thought it was quite good. I love seeing the original cast members return and a return to the world of Beetlejuice. It was a lot of fun, and I highly recommend you go and see it. But if you're watching this, you should have already seen it before you even clicked on this video. So tell me what you think in the comment section. Did you like Beetlejuice Beetlejuice? Let's not say it a third time. Beetlejuice.
You like it?